Fear is the only pattern that I'm aware of, the interference pattern that prevents whole earth, heart, brain, cell resonance. And in our culture, fear has many masks. Now, I placed this image here, not knowing how it would come out across the video. We'll try this and we'll see. Well, this is an experiment that was done at Bell Labs in New Jersey, and it's kind of interesting. Down below, what you see are 200 blocks. It's a combination of 200 blocks of black, white, and gray that are randomly organized, and that's what that is. Up above, when I ask people what they are seeing in this arrangement, this array of these same 200 blocks, just arranged differently, more often than not, what they'll say is a man, and then they are even specific enough to say Abraham Lincoln in some cases. Well, this isn't Abraham Lincoln at all. And if I take this image, I've done this, taken it to a country where men do not grow facial hair and where they've never heard of Abraham Lincoln, they won't see a man here at all. We see it in this country. And the reason that we see that is the reason that I'm showing it to you here. Because your brain attempts to make sense out of all the information that comes to it. And when it finds something it cannot recognize, it finds the next best pattern, the closest thing that it knows, to assign meaning to that pattern. So this is an example of how we do this with our brain and with our eyes. You and I do precisely the same thing through emotion and feeling. We generalize patterns of feeling. Fear has many, many masks in our society. It's not always Stephen King, pure, unadulterated, shake in your boots fear. If you are able to use any or any combination of these terms to describe some relationship in your life, anger, jealousy, egos, aggressiveness, control, overprotective, smothering, trust issues, depression, emotional unavailability, physical unavailability, prejudiceness, unhappiness, judgment. If you're able to use any or some combination of those words, what you're describing to yourself in the honesty of that description is that you are experiencing fear in that relationship. And it's not bad. I'll be very clear. It is not bad to experience fear. What we are choosing to do is redefine the patterns of fear in our lives so that they may become our friends and our tremendous allies, indicating to us the portions of ourselves, of this liquid crystal matrix, that have not found balance in our world as we're barreling down this road toward what the ancients called the shift of the ages. It is through the gift of fear and the redefinition of that fear that we know ourselves, and that we know ourselves in all ways. Fear, as it expresses many ways in our lives, what I can say to you is this, that for most of you, for most people, 90% of the fears that you will experience in your world are not even your fears. You'll go through 3/4, maybe a full lifetime, coming to terms and recognizing that those patterns are not yours. You may lose entire relationships. You may lose careers in the process of the remembering. The fears are not yours. You were born plugged into predetermined patterns of fear. And I'm going to show you that. I'll show you genetically precisely how it happens in this lifetime, in this last lifetime of maturity before the shift of the ages. What you're being asked to do is to unplug from those old patterns, to break the cycle, to create the paradigm where those fears do not mean the same thing to you any longer. That is your gift of the living bridge to those that you hold most dear in your life. It's done through these codes, the patterns of genetics and DNA within your bodies. Now, when you look at life, this is a standard definition, our standard definition of life. It's interesting. This came up from a chemical textbook. Life is a behavior pattern that chemical systems exhibit when they reach a certain level of complexity. That definition is what was behind our mission to Mars in 1976, as we were looking for biological life. What I really believe we were looking for was consciousness and not life, necessarily. In this narrow definition, we sent this spindly-looking little craft to the surface of Mars, and the rickety thing sort of settled in a cloud of dust on the surface of the planet. It was built by a company that I proudly say I used to work for, Martin Marietta Aerospace. They build very good interplanetary probes. And I always have this image when I think about the Viking mission looking for life on Mars. If I were sitting there seeing this cloud of dust and this rickety thing coming down, looked like a big spider, onto the surface, and all the dust settles out, and all of a sudden a little tube pops up, and from that tube a little arm comes up and directs itself into a certain position, and it's silent, and all of a sudden there's a pop, and this thing that looks like dental floss with a weight on the end of it shoots across the Martian surface, and then they reel it back in, and the sticky stuff on the string is holding the microbes as the string is drawn down through a media. And the idea was that if there was life on Mars that would show up as a culture in this media, it would send that information back to Earth, and we would say, ah, there is life on another planet, not knowing that within a few miles of where they were looking for biological life, there were archaeological remnants between 50 and 100,000 years old, reaching 2 miles long and resembling very closely many of the archaeological sites here on Earth. Well, this is our definition of life, and we didn't find any life on Mars biologically, so we say there is no life there. Well, when we define that life, what we say is it takes 6 components: water, fats, lipids, proteins, salts, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids to create the life as we know life on Earth. And it's the nucleic acids that we'll focus on. DNA, everyone knows about DNA now because of the O.J. Simpson trial. If nothing else, everybody knows what DNA is all about. What we can say essentially is that DNA makes RNA, RNA makes proteins, and proteins allow the amino acids in our bodies to be what they are. And that all sounds very technical, and what I'll say is you do not have to know any of that. I'm going to offer this from a very different perspective. Now think about this. The reason I put this slide here is so that you can see each of these amino acids, this one here, this one here, this one here. As the amino acids are different, they have a different form, a different geometry, a different shape. I think you can see that. And this is a close-up of more of those amino acids. Notice how this is alanine, for example. It looks like a lollipop. And here we have aspartic acid. Looks like a Y with an extension on, on the bottom of it. Each of these amino acids has a very specific form. It's a pattern. It's a shape. And what I'll ask you to do is to simply consider these as microantennae. Microantennae, microchakras. Because that is, from a metaphoric perspective, that's precisely the role that they play. Microantennas, microchakras. Now we have codes for these antennas. And our codes are 3-digit codes, UCU, GAU. These are chemical codes that we use to define different combinations of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen that go into making these antennae. So what I have on this list right here, these are the 20 known amino acids, the 20 known antennae that define human as you and I know human today. Some of these you've probably heard about, the lysine and the tryptophan that has been very controversial on the markets today. So you may think of these as the 20 antennae that we have available to us right now. So the 64 possibilities of codes that we call the human genetic code are what you're seeing here, and there's a mystery surrounding these codes. And this is a mystery that has been with us, the life sciences, even to this moment. Even to this moment. And the mystery looks like this. We have 64 possibilities. 64 possibilities. And of these 64 possibilities, it appears that only 20 of these codes are turned on right now for us, the 20 amino acids. So I'm going to go over to the board, and let's look at this and see what this means to us. 64 possibilities of code that we have available to us. Why aren't all 64 possibilities turned on? We have 20 amino acids. If these are antennae, we have 64 possibilities of antenna. If only 20 antennae are turned on, where are the rest of them? Where are the rest of the antennae? Why don't we have the other 44 antennae turned on for us? That's the mystery in the life sciences. That continues to be a mystery in this